Hey, everybody, can everyone hear me okay? Yes. Turn off the mic for a second. Just turn it off just for a second. Oh, but you can take it off the speakers, or it has to go through the speakers? Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. Anyway, hey, you guys over there. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I don't know, boy, it's gonna be a tough day. I don't know exactly where Linda is, but I know that she knows you're all here. And she really appreciates you and loves you all. Whew. So what we're going to do next is, in a moment, we're going to play a video, and then I'm going to give my eulogy. Connor is going to give his eulogy, and then we're going to open the floor. And if anybody would like to come up and say something about Linda or your memory, because we're really thinking of this as a memorial, not in the sad sense, but we're remembering her, remembering the things about her that brought us joy. So we're going to open the floor, and if you want to come up and say something, great. I will just say this. Just don't make it weird. Don't make it about you, and don't make it about politics. Those are my 3 rules. If you do that, I'm on good terms with Jeff, I will have him cut the mic. Yes, Connor?
I'm going to need to rewrite my eulogy.
You have a little more leeway, that's okay. Anyway, so yes, that's what we're going to do. And then afterwards, depending on how many people want to speak or how few, we'll also have some time out in the patio, And my friend Audrey got some like bubble makers, so we're thinking of bubbles up to Linda in the patio. So great, so that's it. I think, Jeff, we can go ahead and we'll start the video.
When I got to spend a few weeks living with Ed and Linda and Connor, I had a job working at the Sherman Oaks Mall at Abercrombie and Fitch, and I couldn't believe my luck when I found out that Linda was going to drive her black Mercedes to work. Now, I worked the closing shift at Abercrombie, so when I left the mall, it was dark, and on one particular dark night, I backed her Mercedes and wrecked her car. And so, of course, I had to drive home and tell her. And I don't remember the details of how it all got resolved. I'm sure she wasn't happy with me, but she didn't let me know it for a second. I remember feeling instantly forgiven, unconditionally loved, not an ounce of shame put on me for this mistake that I had made. And to my insecure teenage self, that was everything. The other thing that I love so much about Linda is her laugh. It's probably my favorite thing about her. She had this laugh that was so big that it would take over her whole body. When you thought she was done laughing, she would start laughing again. And it would be even bigger and even more infectious than the laugh before. And when she laughed like that, it was just impossible not to be with her. Linda, I love you so much. You are in my heart.
first met Linda when our kids were in kindergarten. Kit wanted the boy to come to their birthday party. It was the next year, though, when Linda and I were both at the school library that we were able to know. I was so struck and in awe and passion for knowledge. Being able to get curious about something and investigate it and learn about it was such a thrill lesson for me. It was when she moved to Providence that I really saw her curiosity in action. She didn't really know anybody yet, so she spent some time auditing some classes from various universities. Usually a history class, but it could be just about anything, probably art. But then, as she got to know the area, she volunteered at the Preservation Society and got to know more and more about what she moved to. And when I would visit her, she would take me on a tour of what it was like. And then on another visit, we went out to Newport, tour of the mountains. And as we walked through them, the tour guides had their things to say, but Linda was able to describe what the parties must have looked like when we walked through them, or what it might have been like to change from the lunch attire to the dinner. It must have been like for the servants to help them get ready, transport everything through the hallways behind the walls and the stairwells that nobody knew about. She was really able to bring them to life because she had read and learned experience more than anything.
Hi, my name is Kate, and when I first met Linda, it was at a weird time in my life. I had left grad school unexpectedly and was less than a year into my first real job and really didn't have many friends in Providence. Linda was volunteering for the organization that I worked at. I quickly realized she was one of those top-tier, highly competent, and reliable volunteers who are worth their weight in gold. Pretty soon, we clocked each other as fellow night owls and started hanging out outside of work. There aren't many 60-year-olds who are up for watching weird French serial killer movies and eating cake until 1 a.m., but that was right up Linda's alley, so we got along swimmingly. My husband was working night shift at the time, so I ended up at her loft in the evenings more often than not. Over the course of our friendship, I got to accompany her to fantastic restaurants, hear wild tales of her old life in California, gossip about total strangers, and as you probably know, Linda never minced words about how she felt about people and didn't suffer fools gladly. So when she told me she thought I was a really cool and interesting person, I knew she truly meant it. She always made sure that I knew she missed me, I was loved, even when she had moved back to the West Coast. We didn't see each other much anymore. She was such an important person. I feel so lucky.
Got to know Linda. It didn't take very much time. You could on occasion appeal to that logic. Really about trying to when she was 20, she lived in Paris. Out of the blue, eyes wide open the way she was. Let's go to Paris. Let's go as soon as we can. Let's make a plan. And I said, to go to Paris, that's like 2 weeks. all my reasons, all my logical reasons. Found our friend watch Connor. I said, okay, well, if we can't go for 2 weeks, let's go for 3 days. Get there, it's a day and a half. Back, you're all that time and effort. Go to Paris. Couldn't really argue with that. We went to Paris for 3 days. Of course, we weren't going to be able to explore days, but everything that a first do this. We climbed up all the way to the top of Notre Dame. Stood out there and saw this incredible city. Lunch, walked down the floating barges that goes down the Seine. And that's like some of the things that we did. Somehow get all that stuff into these experience that I never would have had if it just been I would have come up with all these logical reasons why it didn't make sense. But Linda didn't care about that. Care about what made sense to do. Didn't care about what you should do or shouldn't do or what other people added a lot. There were those impulses that were difficult to deal with. Led to something.
Well, this isn't something that I was expecting to have to do anytime soon. Linda was my person. We all have that person who means more to them, has made more of an impact than anyone could imagine. And for me, that was Linda Powell Fitzgerald. I thought about Atlanta in '96 and all the times that we were getting lost with all those darn Peachtree streets and what that was like and the excitement in the moment. And then I thought about when Linda took me to Vegas and I turned 21 and she was that person, even though she was older than me, that was still who I wanted to hang out with and we had a great time. But it wasn't a single story. It was the traditions that I have and that have continued with my own children because of Linda, or as they call her, Mommy Linda. It was the every Sunday NFL football in our pajamas while eating turkey bacon because Connor would have to have turkey bacon since we were little, even when he didn't want to watch football with us. It was the hanging out and watching horror movies while eating amazing food. It was the everyday cook. God only knew I wasn't getting that from my mom. It was being there when I needed somebody, always. On my drive, even though we hated talking on the phone, but she would keep me company driving back from Williamsburg and talk about how she was that person who was always there for you. Funny, witty, beautiful, and I'm gonna miss that smile. So with that, Linda, I love you and miss you.
Hi, I'm Carrie. I've known Linda for over 35 years. We met through Ed and my husband Carl, who went to college together for a couple of years and became pretty fast friends. So much so that when our daughter was born in 2000, Ed and Linda became her godparents and regretted that decision. Through the years of raising kids and just busy working, things like that, we didn't see as much of each other as we had hoped. Best memories are the last 5 years or so when I would drive to North Hollywood to see Linda, and we would go to the museums or go out to lunch or just sit in her house and talk about so many things with so much depth. Our conversations were so honest and so loving and compassionate, and we would just drop in anytime, no matter how much time it had passed, we would just drop right in. And I keep hearing her beautiful voice since Ed told me the news, and it's very comforting to me. She had the most beautiful voice, the most beautiful speaking voice. I don't know if she was a good singer or not, but her voice, her speaking voice, is something that will stay with me for the rest of my life. Linda loved me and I loved her on a level that was pure acceptance, pure friendship, pure sisterhood, and I will be forever grateful. And I will miss her deeply.
When I think about Linda, there is a very specific photograph. I was in sixth grade, the same grade I teach now, as you can see. In the photo, Linda and I are standing in the driveway on Houston Street. We are in front of her Mitsubishi Montero, just doing these really flamboyant poses. I'm not sure what we were doing there. I think someone, probably Ed, was washing the car, and we decided to have an impromptu photo shoot. Linda in the picture is just looking effortlessly cool as always, and I look pretty cool too because not too long before that, Linda had taken me shopping for some outfits that would help me fit in sixth grade, and I was wearing this red plaid jumper thing that I felt really great about at the time. And this picture, I think, really captures what it was like to be around Linda always, not just as an angsty 11-year-old, but as an adult, as a friend, as a family member, as a stranger, anyone. You know, she just brought so much joy and life and playfulness to every situation. It also just reminds me how welcoming Linda was to everyone. I was not the easiest house guest at 11, I don't think, and she still welcomed me into her home and included me with everything that she did with Connor and helped me with so many things. And I really appreciate it and still think about it all the time now. And I'm so glad that I was able to continue having a great relationship with Linda as an aunt and friend once I got to college and graduated college. And I really just want to thank Linda so much for creating a safe haven. That's an inside joke. Hopefully somebody gets that for me at the time, and just always being amazing. We'll miss you so much.
Hi, I'm Ron of Linda and Ronnie. I say it like that because for the first 20 years of my life, Linda and I were best friends, inseparable. And it was always Linda and Ronnie this, Linda and Ronnie that, wherever Linda was at, being my older sister, I was somewhere close behind. So, of course, growing up together, I have a lifetime, thousands of stories that I could tell you about. But one of the most important things that happened for me in our long friendship and relationship was we had a band, and the band was called Hot Mama's Rocks, and Linda was Hot Mama, of course. And we used to go around different places, and Linda used to always tell everybody that her brother is one of the greatest musicians on the planet. And I still remember her saying that, and that has always been one of my greatest motivations to try to be a great musician. So thank you, Linda. Of course, during all that time, we talked about. I think that Linda did mostly everything that she wanted to do, but I can say with certainty that the thing that made her life complete was Ed and Connor. So, thank you, Ed and Connor.
I didn't want you to feel left out. And Connor's one of the greatest artists in the world. And I was a writer. But seriously, don't know quite, where to begin. Linda was a very difficult person to categorize, or I'd say she defied categorization. And you might think you knew some part of her, or you think you had a bead on her, and then she had this whole other side that maybe you never saw. And all these wonderful people, and thank you everyone, by the way, who did those videos and sent them. Thank you so much. Kaya, Carrie, Kara, Arden, Kate, everyone on there is talking about how generous Linda was and how they felt so deeply loved. And that was true, and she could absolutely be that way. But I don't think it's going to come as a surprise to anybody in this room that Linda could sometimes be a difficult person to get along with. In fact, I know there are multiple people in this room who, once had decades-long relationships with Linda and then didn't. And I came very close multiple times to being one of those people. But yet, she was also so full of love, She could be very elegant and, want to wear the most, attractive fashions. And then she was also, we spent many, many hours watching Love Island. Though in her defense, she would watch the English version, not the American version, because the people in the American version were trash. But she really just defied any kind of categorization, and even our relationship, her and my relationship, reflected that and kind of defied categorization. Just in this whole process, I would say, people would say, "Oh, what's going on? Is something wrong?" And I would say, "Well, somebody died who I really cared about. How do I express that to you?" And we even had a bit where there was a while after our marriage ended where I would introduce her as my ex-wife, and she said, "Don't introduce me as your ex-wife. I'm more than your ex-wife." And so we came to a compromise that she was then, "This is Linda. She is my friend. She is the mother of my child. And she's also my ex-wife." And that pleased her. And I've talked to a bunch of you in this room and people on the live stream since she passed, which tomorrow is going to be 4 weeks, which is hard to believe. But the most common thing all of you said was that Linda was a force of nature. And that was absolutely true. And that was one of the things I remember so distinctly the first time that I met her. It was in the summer of 1986. I was in a production meeting for a film that I was going to be directing with a friend of mine, and I didn't know anybody on the crew except for my friend. And suddenly I just saw from across the room this very tall, striking woman stand up and just start to stride across the room like she owned the entire building. You know, her hair was very short on the side, and it was like in some of these pictures and kind of poofed up in front, and she wasn't wearing glasses then, so she had those big brown eyes that just like pierce into you. And she just strides right up to me. She says, shakes out her hand, "I'm Linda Fitzgerald, I'm the script supervisor. And I loved your script. I thought it was very funny, and I would read it and laugh, and I would call my brothers and read them parts from the script." And I was like, what planet is this person from? And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean I had never met anybody like her that had that presence and that confidence. You know, and I know there's more, you know, she also had a vulnerable side and a fragile side as well, but, and it wasn't like it was a love at first sight thing. It was just more, I just never met anyone like this. And then, you know, we went ahead and did the movie, and the point about some of the challenges with her, you know, for those, I know a bunch of you work in the movie industry or have worked. Normally on a movie set or a TV set, all the crew members are very deferential to the director. Their sort of jobs depend on it, so they have to be. But not Linda. And there was one point where, I don't know if you know what a script supervisor does, but they're in charge of keeping track of the continuity between shots. So what the actors are wearing, what direction they're looking, are they holding a prop or not holding a prop? What door did they exit this set from? And their question came up whether an actor had a prop in their hand. And Linda said, no, they didn't. And I thought that I really did. And so I said, the worst 3 words you could say to Linda, "Are you sure?" And she did not speak to me for 2 days on the set, not just afterwards, on the set. And I was her boss, technically. But we eventually patched things up. And then we got to, so that was our first iteration, was boss and employee. That, you know, it worked out okay. She was a very good script supervisor. But we kept in touch, and like, I don't know, a few months after the movie ended, we went out, we started dating. And so we started the next iteration of our career, which is of our relationship as romantic partners. And within 6 months, we moved in together. And that was also a challenge. Linda and I were very different personalities, as all of you who know us both know that. And we eventually made it work, but those first 6 weeks were rough. A big reason is that Linda was perhaps the cleanest person in the entire world. Now, Ronnie, I don't know, if you guys wanted to have a little competition, would you have been able to take her for cleanest person? Yeah. Yes, okay. Okay, fair enough. But she was pretty clean, and I was not. And that was a problem. And there were a whole bunch of problems. But we eventually worked this out because we realized the things we cared for about each other and the things we had in common were more important. We made the commitment to make that work. And I'm sorry, I did a little Marco Rubio move there. But I'm so glad we did for a bunch of reasons, besides the one sitting in front of me. She also, that time with her, something similar to, I think what Kay had said to me, that time I spent with her, she helped me become a man. And it wasn't just some of the obvious things like put down the toilet seat. If you leave crumbs on the counter, please remove those crumbs. Don't wait for me to do it. But it was other stuff. It was things like, hey, if you're at a guest at someone's house, bring a host or hostess gift. Don't take your plates up. Offer to help. See if they need anything. Just these things that were, as a 26 or 27-year-old, I just hadn't really started doing yet. And I don't know when I would have done them were it not for Linda's help. So then we got married in 1989, and in 1990, but more than 9 months later, we entered the next phase of our relationship was parents. And, Linda, as we finally got to know each other more and she was able to be more vulnerable, she let me know that she, as confident as she could be on the surface, she really felt like she didn't really fit in anywhere completely. She was around a lot of white people, and white people constantly reminded her that she was black. And black people often reminded her that she wasn't black enough. She was very creative, but she just couldn't find the thing that was like the true source for that the true output for that creativity. And that was a thing that she struggled with. But then on that fateful December 26th in 1990, we had Connor. And, I don't mean to be sort of old-fashioned or patriarchal about it, like every woman has to become a mother to find her true meaning. I don't mean that at all. But for Linda, being a mother and being part of that family we had, she had finally, like in the deepest part of her being, felt that she was at home. And this is what she belonged, and this is what she intended to do. And Connor's gonna talk after me, and he'll talk about what she was like as a mother. I'll leave that to him, except to say that, there is no woman on this earth who is more fiercely devoted to her child than Linda was to you. So, and as parents, fortunately, we were always aligned about the way we wanted to raise Connor, what our values were about child rearing, and that helped a lot. It helped particularly in 2007 when we split up as a romantic couple. And that was the second time where I thought I was going to become an ex-friend of Linda's. This first year and a half was very difficult. We both had multiple reasons to be very angry, and we were. But again, like sort of when we had moved in, I remember we finally had our court date for our divorce, which never happened. But in 2009, we thought it was going to happen, and we were in court, and we were sitting there side by side. We were barely speaking at that time, and there were all these cases before us, and we were hearing all of these horror stories, like couples who had joint custody of their kids and they couldn't exchange their children without a police officer there, or a parent who didn't want to send their kid to the other parent because of what they thought was going on in the home and the child was in danger. And at one point we just looked at each other and like, the only thing we're arguing about is money. We're really lucky. And when it was finally our time in front of the judge said the same thing. He's like, what are you doing here? All you're arguing about is money. Get out of here, go see a mediator and go. And somehow that just, I don't know, just released everything. And we started the journey to our next iteration as friends. Now in 2009, we were not great friends. It was more like we were amicable, We could get along, we were able to be in the same room and all that stuff. But that was good. That was a big improvement from where it was. And then she moved in 2010, I think it was, she moved to Rhode Island. And then, because Connor was going to school there, and I'm from Connecticut, and I still had a lot of family in New England, so I started going out there multiple times a year to visit Connor, to visit my family. And I stayed with Linda. She said, of course, yes, just stay here with me in Providence because it's so easy to get around in New England. And I stayed there, and this amazing, for those of you who have been there, she somehow, because it was Linda, she somehow strolled into the city she'd never been in before and scored the most amazing apartment in history with these incredible views. And it was an artist loft, but it also had a separate bedroom, and it was just walking, because downtown Providence is amazing. And so it was a really great time for her, and that's when we sort of realized, well, you know what? Being married is probably a good thing that happened to both of us. And her, I think particularly, as I mentioned about her not knowing where to put her sort of creative energies, but when she was in Providence, she got involved in the art scene there, and her creativity really exploded. And that's when she first started doing collage, which you can see some of her work over there. And it's really, I think, really remarkable, a lot of it. And that time there in Providence was just so great for her, and she had so many great friends and did so many things, and she got appointed to the Human Rights Council for the city of Providence, and she just got into the upper echelons of the government and nonprofit world there, and just had this incredible social life and artistic life. And we became then really good friends because we spent so much time together hanging out in Providence. And then Connor came back to LA, and she was starting to have some health issues and didn't want to be there when she didn't have family. So she came back to California also. And that's where we sort of began this last and final stage of our relationship. I'll leave some of the drama of a couple of the intervening years, but we found ourselves in a situation where I had been subletting my house to her for a couple of years, and then I needed to come back to that house. And we decided to live together share the same house. And at first it was sort of a decision of convenience, I think. And partially it was gonna save me some money, and secondly, I could take her to doctor's appointments and help her with stuff that she needed. But the amazing thing that happened over those 2 years was we got so much closer, which I didn't really think that we could do because we already knew each other so well. We just got so much closer, and again, it's comes to this recurring theme with Linda that there's no way she will not refuse to be pinned down, because she would say, she said to me, "Oh, you're my best friend," and I would say, I think of you as like a sister, because we've known each other forever. We know all the same people. You know my whole life story. We get along great a lot of times, and sometimes we don't. That to me seems like a sister or a family member. But then in those 2 years, it became something way more than that. It was she was more than a family member, and she was more than a friend to me, which is what's made the last 4 weeks so hard, because the house is now so empty. We had our morning ritual where I would get up, I'd go down the hall to her bedroom. She was usually already awake, and she was laying in bed, sitting in bed, playing games. And I'd say, "Come on, get out of bed. Come keep me company in the kitchen while I make breakfast and stuff." And we just had the best time. And I really miss that. But over the years, because this relationship was very difficult for people to wrap their heads around. But you're married, you're not married, you've lived together, what are you doing actually? And we had all sorts of comments about our relationship. It was different, it was unusual, it was complicated, it was weird. I used to get that too. And people would say, "Well, why do you even have your ex-wife in your life? Why are you doing that? Why did you split up if you're just gonna have her back in your life?" And there's a simple reason for that. Because for all the challenges that could be loving Linda, as many of us know, there was a loyalty she had. In 2014, brothers and my sister was dying of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And she got put in a hospice. And they told us at the time, well, you know, she's got weeks, maybe a month and a half, maybe 2 months. But within a week, they called me on a Friday and said, you need to come now because she's not gonna make it through the weekend. And because my brother and I were both living in California, we tried as soon as we could to get tickets, but we couldn't get there before Saturday afternoon. And the thought of my sister spending her last day alone, dying, and it's I mean, it was a nice place, but still, I couldn't bear that. And so I called a bunch of my family members who lived locally, and for no fault of theirs, there were things that they could not go spend time with her. So I called Linda, and I start to just explain the situation. I don't even ask her if she'll go. I didn't have to get that far, because when I explained what was going on, she goes, okay, I got my keys. I will be there in an hour. And I know that she was doing something, and she had plans, but she dropped it without even being asked, because that's the love and the loyalty she was capable of that everybody was mentioned in the video. And she drove out there, and she spent the afternoon with my sister. They talked, you know, and my sister, I don't even think knew she was dying, and they just had a conversation about the next apartment my sister was gonna get and how they would, and Linda would help her furnish it. And it was so comforting to me that my sister's last hours were spent with someone she knew and someone she loved. And, you know, Linda left and went home, and that night, you know, she lost consciousness and she died the next day. But when people say to me, why would you continue to have your ex-wife in your life? I would say, if you have a person who is so committed and will do whatever you need them to do in the most important moment, why wouldn't you have that person in your life? How could you not have that person in your life? And I'm so glad I did, and I'm a much better and a richer person for it. So, thank you very much.
Not been drinking enough water. Hi, everyone. As you all probably know, I'm Connor, Linda's son. I'm also a millennial. I know, it's a shocker. So I have things on this iPad because I also have ADHD, so who knows how we're gonna string things together. But before I begin, I would just like to thank everybody here, not just in this room, in the live stream, in her life. I'm very, very grateful. So, with that out of the way, let's dive right in. As a show of hands, who in here has written a eulogy? Or had to? Yeah. So, thank you. So, I don't know how you all found it. I'd imagine it's probably in a similar vein. But this was really hard. This was hard. It was stressful, very emotional. And at times it was really sweet in a way to be able to remember her and recount her like this. But I would spend half a day tinkering over what I'd written. I would shift paragraphs around. I'd add new lines. Which happened to me last night. I'd be going to bed and I'd go, ooh, what if? And a new draft was born. And, you know, I'd be working on these things and I'd always tell myself as I got stuck, just sleep on it. You know, come to it tomorrow with a fresh mind, fresh eyes. Let's tackle it then. And I kept telling myself that. It's weird. I kept telling myself to sleep on it concocting draft after draft after draft. And if anyone was keeping score just now, that's at least 5 drafts that didn't make it. And I'm sure it was at least twice that. And it just, nothing I did made the cut. It all felt wrong in a way, almost inauthentic. And I obviously didn't want to be inauthentic. I want to celebrate her in a way that I feel like honors her and honors my relationship with her and her relationship with all of you. So I started with a list. I started with a list of her characteristics. You know, I would say she was witty. She was this charismatic spirit that just brightened any room. She was sharp as a tack and had this immense capacity for kindness and compassion, akin to a saint. She was super cool, as people said in the videos. I always looked up to her like, that is the coolest person I know. And I always wished I could be as cool as her. I had friends growing up. You know, a lot of people in here feel the same way. I've had friends over the years who would, after meeting my mom, they'd come up and be like, Connor, your mom is so cool. And I'd be like, thank you. But there couldn't help be part of me that felt like it was delivered in a way like, what happened to you? Which I know is not the case. I'm in therapy, don't worry, everyone. But I recognized how cool she was and how free she felt. There was this liberation about her that was intoxicating. It was hard not to feel that as well. Like my father said, you know, she can go up and say, let's take a 3-day trip to France, and you just kind of did it. And it was awesome, you know? It was awesome. But then I realized I didn't need to tell everyone all those things. I think everyone in this room can safely say, whether you've met her once or she was this big part of your life, you kind of just like knew all that stuff. She was very impressionable and very impressive, both. And it was, you know, could be a lot to meet her. And growing up, when I'd have friends meet her, they'd be like, oh, I see where you get all that stuff from. Which was then funny because then they meet my dad and go, ooh, no, now I get it. Now it's all here. But, you know, again, we all know that. We all have an idea at least. And I feel like at that point I would just be bragging about my mother, which I realized, hey, I can do that. I want to brag about her. I want to brag about her the same way that she would brag about me to everyone. She knew, everybody. I had people growing up who'd be like, do you get embarrassed by that? I'm like, nah, I'm used to it. It's everybody. I would step away for an extra item at the grocery store, and I would come back in line to my mother, and the cashier would turn and go, oh, you're Connor. I've heard so much about you. I like playing D&D too, which is Dungeons and Dragons if you were cool in high school. And it was awesome. It felt like I'd be reunited with a family friend I hadn't seen since I was a kid. And my dad and I would always say that everywhere she went, she made a friend. Especially as you've all heard, when she was in Providence, the community that she became a part of. You know, I remember I was with her and we bumped into someone, you know, walking down the street. Providence is small. And they were having this conversation. He was like, oh, your mother's amazing. And she's told me about all your art and blah. It was very nice. It was a very nice guy. But I didn't know who he was. And when he walked away, I was like, so, Mama, who was that? And she's like, that's the mayor. Okay, cool. And he was a neat guy, and he thought she was awesome. But then I thought, you know, maybe I should take a sentimental approach, you know, and appreciate those very emotional, bolstering, supportive aspects of her that helped, I guess, make me the person I am today. And I thought about, you know, how she moved to Providence so she could be near me, but not in my space when I went to school in Boston, which is an immense amount of consideration that, as you could imagine, as a 19-year-old, I was like, wow, that's awesome, because now I can go run home to mom if I need to. I could also talk about how she would light up when she saw my art, or when I'd tell her about the comics I wanted to make, or the stories I wanted to tell. And she was just my biggest advocate, my number one fan, and at the same time just was this thing I looked up to and my biggest inspiration. But then I thought, because it can't just end, well, hey, I could focus on a story. Because my mom was a story. She felt like a myth in a lot of ways. This kind of impossible energy and attitude, and yet when people met her, they'd be like, I got it. I thought so many times when we were going through things in the last few weeks that I would find an ornate box under her bed with a dagger wrapped in ancient parchment that was like depicting some sort of, and I just would have believed it, honestly, because it was her, and because, as we all know, she just lived this life, just like such a life. I was tempted to tell a story, I was tempted to tell a story about how she would role play Lord of the Rings characters with her brothers. Or maybe just about how everything she did, it felt like she just kind of she just did it. She was a dancer, she was an artist, a writer, a curator, a script supervisor, a mother, a friend. And I realized that there's not an anecdote I could tell or a memory that I could share that felt like it was really capturing everything. And I know that none of us have the time in the world for me to just talk about all the ways that I loved my mother and how she meant to me. I made it about me, Father, I'm sorry.
I said you had grace.
I did have grace, thank you. I took out the political parts. So in lieu of the impossible, I decided to share this journey I took writing her eulogy with all of you. I wanted to, share this with the people who supported her, who loved her, who was her friend, her family, and just all the people who made her happy and made her laugh and helped her walk the path in life that she did. And so that's the best I got. But at the end of the day, and I think a lot of us have touched on this too, we're lucky. I'm lucky. But I am the luckiest one here. And I will put ego in here just for my sake, and I know she'd want me to. But I got to know her, I got to love her, I got to be loved by her, raised by her, and she's just still such a large part of who I am and who I want to be. And even before she left us, I could feel her when I drew or when I wrote, when I laughed, when I danced, when I was a little too into cleaning, when I wanted to leave a party kind of early. And I know as I go through my life, I'm still gonna feel her in me and feel that energy. But when it came down to it, I couldn't figure this out. I like I said, this is the best I got. I couldn't even really figure a good way to end this eulogy. So to really bring this to a close and to make it a little cyclical, because my father taught me well in narratives and rhyming scenes and all that good stuff. But I wanted to thank you all again. I wanted to thank you all for being a part of her life, of being a part of mine, that I'm lucky enough to have such a cool mom, to know all of you, to know all the people that meant so much to her. I wanted to thank everybody for being there for me, and it's a really emotionally wild time for being there for my family being there for family. I wanted to thank the lovely MCC UCC, this very church, this beautiful church where we can have this wonderful reception that I'm just so happy about. And I wanted to thank my mother. So thank you, Mama. Thank you. I know how much you loved me, and I know you had at least an idea of how much I loved you, because whenever we'd hang up, not every time, but when you hang up the phone, she would say, I love you more, and I'd be like, nah, I love you more. She's like, I love you first, and I'd say, well, I loved you from the moment I was born. So, sorry. And so I think she did get it. I feel like she did get it. And life is never going to be the same. But despite what happens, I know that we'll all always feel her. Mama, we will feel you with us wherever we go, whenever we talk about her. Even sometimes if we just do something particularly cool and we're like, yeah. I think we'll feel part of her with us there. Will carry us wherever we go, and we will share you with the people that we meet. So in a way, you know, she's like a story that lives on, and I think that's pretty neat. And that's the way I punctuate this eulogy. Tip your waiter, and I think that's gonna do it for me. So thank you all so much again. Thank you. Thank you. And if I could actually, let's give another round of applause for my mother for bringing us all here, for bringing me here. And yeah, with that, I believe we're at the point where we can open up the floor. No?
No, yes.
Oh, okay.
Can I just take your mic?
My father would like to talk to you all real quick.
See, that's why I went first, because I was not going to follow him. I want to reiterate his thanks to the MCC, United Church of Christ in the Valley, to Jeff particularly for helping us out in making all the AV happen, for Reverend Pat. There's also a few people who this whole thing would not have been possible without their help. Of course, first Bailey, Audrey, Marcia, where is Carrie, Kara, who were not only incredible support, but just did a ton of, forgive me, God, done a ton of shit to make this happen. And, of course, Willow, who none of this stuff would have been up without her today. So anyway, so thank you for all that. And yes, as Connor said, now if anybody would like to say anything, please come on up.
No pressure.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Linda's little brother, Mike, and I didn't plan on speaking, but I just knew that I had to get up here and say something to see how important Linda was to me. Connor, you were lucky. Where are you now? You're there. There you go. And you too, Ed. But, you know, I was lucky too, because that was my big sister. You know, growing up, I always felt so lucky because I was so proud of my big sister and my big brother. And I felt like I was the luckiest guy. I learned so much, you know, from Linda. She taught me so many things from a young age. You know, she taught me how to cook, you know. She taught me how to cheat and Scrabble. And by the way, she's the only person who could beat me sometimes. She taught me so much about life, about the world. I always felt like I learned something new from her all the time. She's probably the most intelligent person I've ever known. And I'm so thankful that I got a chance to share a special part of my life when I was competing, having her work with me and traveling all over the world. And, still when I see my friends from back in the 90s, they're like, how's your sister doing, man? Everybody remembers her still, and like you said, she walked in the room and she felt like she owned the place. I don't care if this world record was the gold medalist, whatever. I'm it. And I think, she darn near planned my wedding. Where's Casey? Okay, all right. She's not here, so. But and when she was working with me, she always made me look so good, because she would always send cards to people, thank you cards, and people come to me, oh, thank you for the thank you card. I'm like, okay, Christmas cards and all that stuff. So people always said, that she made me look so professional, and she did such a great job at that. I got a chance to, live with Linda and Ed last year for about 5 or 6 months, and I'm so thankful for that time. I got the chance to share with her, because obviously we didn't know she was going to be leaving us. But I feel like everything happens for a reason, and I'm so thankful for that time. I'm still in shock. Kind of like you were saying, every once in a while you just come out and just start crying for no reason. Certain things remind me of her. And then like when Ed sent me the program with a picture of her, I was like, that's a great picture. That's who she is. I'm gonna miss you so much, Linda. And Connor, you were the light of her life, man. You're awesome. You're an awesome nephew, man. I love you, man. And Ed, thank you so much for being a part of her life and taking care of her the last couple of years. And like you said, people will say, when I tried to explain to people your situation, people always say it was weird. But I said, if you know my sister, you will understand, though. That's the kind of person, she can do something like that. If anybody could do it, she could pull it off. So, I know that now she would want us to celebrate her. And so I'm going to do that. And I'm just thankful that she was a big part of my life. And I'm just thankful that everybody's here. Because I know everybody here who knows her knows how special she was. And I'm proud to be her little brother. Thank you.
Tall guys. Hi, everyone. I'm Kit O'Donnell. I am the kid that was mentioned that wanted Connor at my birthday party. So Linda has been in my life since I was 5 years old. I can't fully know the impact she made because I don't know what it's like to not have her as an influence. And I think about Ed mentioning that she was sometimes othered and was an outcast, and knowing someone with her life experiences was so crucial to get to know that that women can be like that women can have the stances she does, stand by them, and still be respected and navigate this world like that. It was so inspiring to just, be out there. And we were at odds because of how she taught me to be. In a lot of ways, we both had very strong opinions, and she taught me not to back down from those opinions and back them up with history and know why you believe the way you do. And somehow she could still turn that ship around and recognize when she still had more to learn. And just that, everything is bottlenecking, but I wanted to reflect the way she could connect with people who had that same sort of outside view on society and bring them into her momentum and show that there is a place in the world for everybody and you can fight for it and just touch everybody in the way that she did. I'm so glad to have seen the life that she lived and glad that you all did too. Yeah, thank you.
That's okay too.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tess Taylor, and I knew Linda perhaps for the shortest amount of time of all of you, and yet, when you meet a person who you sort of connect with, it doesn't matter. So I met her roughly almost exactly 2 years ago when I came knocking on her door, hoping to scrounge a vote for a tiny, microscopically small community organization for which I was looking for support. And she had me inside, and before we knew it, she was showing me her art. And I'm so tremendously impressed by that. I connected with her instantly. Of course, then I met Ed. She had me over for drinks, then I had her and Ed over for drinks, and then I met Connor. And we got together only maybe 2 or 3 times, and yet we had some of the most profound conversations, including when I would walk my dog through the neighborhood and found her taking out the trash. I mean, just like that. So I find art to be such a profound, important, transcendent aspect of life, and it's complete 180 degrees from what I thought as a young person, where I thought, well, art is only for the elite and the really cool and intelligent and wealthy, and the rest of us are just grubbing here and who am I? What do I know? But I'm a piano player. I guess an artist, you might say. And as I've grown older, I have found that art is probably the most important thing of all, because art can express so much. And in the words of Erica Jong, everybody has talent, but very few of us have the courage to follow it to the place where it may lead. And that really takes courage. So I can relate to the struggle that Ed mentioned about her trying to find her voice. And I'm so impressed by what she showed me and what she told me about the art and how she was able to find her voice, and finding the old slave photos and creating these collages. And it's only today that I saw for the first time these beautiful poems, these sort of mashup poems, and they bring me to tears. This is so beautiful, and I believe the world needs art more than ever, especially today. And that when you're told to do something practical, it's to me that's a cop-out, because the most practical thing in the world is art. When people can understand music and how to paint and draw and to express themselves, they're becoming better human beings. They can do a better job at whatever it is they're doing, and you can make a wonderful living in art if you really want to, and you don't even have to be that talented. So for those of us who question our own talents, and that was a beautiful eulogy, Connor. You should do that more often. Not every... Not too soon. Not too... but the fact is that not every word that we write, not every poem and not every song that we sing, or not every painting that we paint is profound, nor does it necessarily have to see the light of day. But that form of expression, I think, it's healthy, it's essential, it's what connects us to ourselves. I would say, Connor, that you were tremendously fortunate to have had, and still have, always, 2 loving parents. And we're using the past tense with Linda, although I think we should use the present tense. She is. She is. She is here. It's not was, it is. And when you look at the profound dysfunction in society today, so much of it stems, in my opinion, from dysfunctional parenting or absentee parenting. And so for those who have had that tremendous good fortune like you, Connor, and the tremendous good fortune like Ed, to have found a beautiful partner like this, wow, I mean, just give thanks every day of your life. And bless others with your blessings, because you are truly blessed. And I don't want to make this about me, but I'm one of those lucky people too. I have two of the most wonderful parents in the world. And to spread that around is a thing of, it's beautiful to be able to do that. And my parents would invite all my friends into the house. In fact, I'm going through old correspondence and I see my friends saying, when is your dad coming back to visit? When can we have a party with your dad? So lucky you. We don't get to choose our parents. The co-production of Connor is well done, Ed, well done. And Paris, fabulous. There's never been a trip that I've taken that I regretted, even when I couldn't afford it, never. I fell in love in Paris, a great place. So I was really happy to hear that. And I'm not surprised to hear that she was such a fan of Lord of the Rings, because one of my favorite quotations comes from Gandalf. I remembered it after, not being able to remember it precisely when I was talking to you earlier, Ed, and it's Gandalf who says, the only decision that you have is what to do with the time that is given to you. So we need to make the most of our time, because we don't know when it ends, how long it will last. Every moment is very, very important, and the older we get, I think the more we value that. And the last thing I would say is that we've all recently been affected by the fires here in Los Angeles, and it was profound in a way, because unlike some people who had no time whatsoever to evacuate, people in my area, I live, a block away from Linda, we weren't directly affected, but we were sort of on orange alert, and not having to leave instantly, you kind of get to think about, well, what am I going to take with me, Well, whatever I can load into the car. Okay, there's the dog, then what else? And the things that I decided on were, among other things, my fountain pen collection, one of which Linda gave to me, okay, because we had this mutual appreciation. And I realized the things that I loaded into my car were none of them of particular, monetary value, but they're all these beautiful objects of art, and fountain pens and things like that have been given to me by people I love and that I treasure for that reason. It's a sentimental value. So I just think Linda embodied so much of what was good, and I'm shocked at her passing. We've exchanged some beautiful texts and notes and letters. I think that, she's left a profound mark with me in just such a short amount of time, and that's a really beautiful person. So I'm glad to be here today and to share a little bit with you, and bless you, Ed and Connor and everybody here, and her spirit lives on. Thank you.
Wanted to check and see if there was anybody else who wanted to come up as we kind of close out.
Sorry, I won't be so eloquent as Connor and Ed and everybody that's spoken, but I just feel like I have to say, I was a friend of Linda's. We fell out in the last few years, not in such a bad way, but just kind of dissipated. But we did share a very important time, because my son, I am also a mother, and Linda was my son's second mother, and literally she raised my son. He basically lived at the Fitzgerald house for I don't know how many years. But the thing that I wanted to share with you is how much Linda loved Max. And I thought he's my only son, and I thought I loved him more than anything. But Linda I mean, he got like this whole extra thing with Linda. Style, you know, sayings, Bob's your uncle, and, you know, and she would wear, like, when I was dressing today, I was like, Linda, right? Linda, okay? I don't dress like this, but that's what Linda would do. Linda had such a great sense of style. She showed it to Max, she showed it to Connor. It was just like my son was so blessed to have that personality and to have that second mother. He got married 2 years ago, and she came to the wedding, of course. And I was standing there looking at him, and it was one of the most happy days of my life. It was a very magical day. And she just stood next to me, and she goes, I love that boy. and she always would say that. And it's just like Mike said, like when she loved you, when she loved a person, it was like this magical thing. And I will always be so thankful to Linda for loving that boy and for being a mom. So thanks, you guys.
Hi, I'm Ben. I've known Linda for a long, long time. There's a lot I could say, but I do want to share. It was like she was like a Jewish sister to me, because I'm Jewish. And what was funny was that she was raised in a neighborhood where there were lots of other Jewish kids too, or went to a school where there were, so she knew what was going on. So that was always nice to me. She'd, on the holidays, she would know what to say and what to do. But we would go to dinner a lot. We'd have lots of time in the car, and she would brag about her nieces. She would, every time, she would say, specifically, there was one time fairly recently where she got pretty overwhelmed with pride because she was talking about her brothers. And her knowing that they thought that she was cool mattered a whole lot. We certainly talked about Ed and Connor all the time. And if you tell me, maybe not your name because I'm bad with names, but maybe like where you're from, I probably know some of the goods and bads of your story. But so one of the other things that I just wanted to say was how lucky I was to know her, and how she would always want to get a perfect gift. And most of the time, she knew exactly what to do. And recently, she was like, Ben, I don't know what I should get you for Christmas or whatever, Hanukkah. And so I said, all I need, and I'm so lucky that I have this memory, but all I need is more time with you. And I feel so good that I shared that with her. And I thank you so much for being here, because I haven't been able to talk about her with many people. I'm an ugly crier. So in the Jewish tradition, I'll just say, may her memory be a blessing.
I had not planned to talk, but I figured, Ben, I had not gotten a chance to meet you, but she also talked about you all the time. I know where you guys used to go to dinner and the wine you used to drink, and oh, did she brag about you guys. So for those who don't know me, and most of you don't recognize me because I look a little different from when I was younger, so I've gotten to see Ronnie and Patty and Mike. Connor, at least you knew that I was not blonde anymore. Linda was my godmother, and I don't have memories before Linda, but Connor, she God, she loved you so much. I mean, you know, funny stories of when, like, you know, I shared with Connor after Linda's passing that I fell asleep once babysitting him. I think I was 13. Linda never let me babysit again. Like, it wasn't that I was like, dude, he was asleep. I didn't, like, leave the baby on a counter and he fell off. Like, she did not forgive me on that one. You know, there are so many memories, right? Like driving around and Mike, your Range Rover, would bounce on it, and like she would roll up, and it's probably part of the coolness, right? She would come up to Campbell Hall with like that music because you had that sound system on it that like you could hear it coming, and I mean, and she would brag on her nieces, like, you guys, she was so proud. I mean, she was showing me pictures on recent visits. The fires, you know, someone mentioned my last text from Linda, so you're not the only one bringing up electronics here. Her last text to me, it was from the fires. We had spoken after it, but it was, "Don't you worry, I'm fine, promise." Linda is never gonna be forgotten. And Connor, I wanted to share with you because, you know, my girls are that next generation, and after her passing, so they called her Mommy Linda. My daughter said she is who I idolize as the Black woman that I can be. And she looked up to them. And I know, Ed, you said she didn't always feel like she fit, but really she fit everywhere. She assimilated, and that was the thing that she and my daughter talked about, how they could assimilate in any room that they went into, and they owned the room. And I think Alessia got her, honestly, from Linda. She may not have spent as much time as I wish she could have, but she's like a little mini her, and it will keep carrying on. And those traditions, whether it is, you know, I can cook. I mean, I also learned a little cleaning from, by the way, Ed. Ed is the dishwasher king, and Linda and I had something to say, but we may have called him names when it related to that. But I have also taught other people how to load a dishwasher, thanks to Ed. But Linda's traditions are going to be with us, and she is going to be always that cool. I already asked Ed if we could have the login. My daughter wants to continue her Yelp reviews because apparently she is the like baddest, and she gets invited to like events because of her Yelp reviews, because she was just so clever. And I mean, I said I wasn't going to say it in mixed company, but like what, you know, when she was talking to my daughter, we're at a Michelin star restaurant not that long ago, and she's like, "Yeah, my pronoun is dat." And I was like, and my daughter just spit her food out in the middle of this thing, and I was like, "Yeah, that's Mommy Linda. I don't know what to say." Like, you know, she was the classiest person in the room, the funniest, the wittiest, but most of all, like the proudest of you. So Connor, just know we love you. We're all here for you. It's great to see many people here and how much she is loved. And I know a lot of people who are watching out there as well. So, you know, sometimes you've talked about she didn't always get along with everybody, but honestly, everybody still loved her and everybody still thought she was the coolest. And they knew they were usually wrong in some way, probably, if they wanted to admit it or not. At least that's what she would tell you. So, you know, apparently my ringtone for when I would call Linda was California Love, because I am not here anymore. So every time she heard the song, I didn't think that one would necessarily be as appropriate. However, because we did love our Tupac together in the bounced Range Rover, you know, the last line is, "Lady, don't you know we love you? Sweet lady, place no one above you." And I just, nobody was above her. And Connor, we love you. Ed, love you. She still was my favorite, but I had good godparents. I can live with that. You can live with that. You're my number 2 favorite godparent. How's that? But Connor, you're my favorite godbrother, and we love you guys.
Going twice? I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where we're.
So that. Thank you, everybody. Well, for us, we're now going to start to vacate these premises, not instantly, but in a few minutes. But we do also have the patio out there, and we are going to start collecting out there. Send out some bubbles to Linda. And because she was very ticklish, so she will feel them. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.